Hello and welcome to another video. This time it's a fireside session. I finally have this little fire set up, although I still have some things to fix because it rained tonight and there was a crack in the chimney outside and the water came in, so I've got to fix that. But yeah, so far so good. It belts out the heat. I love it. I just sit here in the mornings, crank that thing on, and start work, start coding, and maybe sometimes recline in that chair right there. It's pretty chill. But anyway, you're not here to see that. I want to talk about something that a lot of people ask questions around and probably wonder as well. Do I have to do every single lesson in the Odin Project in order to get a job? Basically, I mean, that's why you're doing the Odin Project, right? Most people is to get a job. And do you have to do every single lesson? In summary, I would say it's a very good idea to do every single lesson. However, I'm going to show you my path, what I did, what I didn't do, and I still got a job. So I want to be a bit more transparent, though this is not recommended by the Odin Project and the people who maintain and manage the project. They strongly recommend you do every single lesson in sequence, and I agree with that. Just to preface my reasons why, I was in a bit of a rush to get a job. I was on paternity leave and I had a certain amount of time where I was not working at my full-time job. So my goal was to get a job before I had to go back to my other job, which I did succeed. But it took me 8 months from the start of the Odin Project to land my first job, which is a respectful amount of time. It's not super fast, but it's pretty quick, I think. And I had to skip a few lessons and make a few decisions, but it paid off for me. And before I jump into all this, there is absolutely no replacement for learning foundations. And the Odin Project does a very good job at teaching you the foundations. I don't just mean the foundations module, I mean the foundations of programming in general. There are some lessons that are nice to know rather than need to know. And you can also pick things up on the job as well, and that's something you may not understand. Picking things up on the job is definitely okay, as long as you're quick at picking things up and you're not picking up too many things, obviously. And my reason for justifying skipping certain things was because one of my good friends is a Ruby on Rails developer, and I know damn well he doesn't know Ruby in depth. He knows enough to use Rails very well and build web apps, but when it comes to data structures, algorithms, things like recursion, binary search trees, things like that, most web developers don't use those on the daily basis. And I bet you if you tasked a good number of web developers out there who do a good job at web development, they wouldn't be able to do that stuff without referring to documentation, looking things up. However, it's still very helpful to understand those things and know how to use them, know what they are. And if you have the time, do the lessons and complete the projects. I do recommend that. I didn't. And let's jump into it. I'm going to share my screen here. Back and forth, sorry. That is the wrong screen. There you go. So, okay. This is the Odin Project. You're all very familiar with this. This is the paths. So, if we look at the foundations, here we are, foundations. So I did all of these, or this lesson must have been added after I came along, but I completed all these lessons. So yeah, okay, there are a couple more lessons that were added after I completed this, but I know that I did complete every one of these lessons in foundations, and I think that that's a given. You must complete all of those. It's very foundational, basic level stuff, and you can't really skip any of this because you need to know it. And you use this kind of stuff on a daily basis. And these JavaScript projects are great as well. I chose Ruby. And if we look in the Ruby course, you can see right here I was 88% complete. I did not complete everything in the Ruby course. So let's take a look at that in more detail. So the introduction, basic Ruby. Yes, definitely do all the basic Ruby. You need to know basic Ruby. And the basic Ruby projects. Definitely focus on object-oriented programming. Do not skip this stuff, in my opinion, because that is foundational to software development. Understanding, knowing how to use an object-oriented language and how to use classes, objects, etc. It's foundational. You can't skip that stuff. This files and serialization. This event manager project, I remember this caused me, it was more of a tutorial than an actual project. But there was a lot going on here that I didn't quite understand. At least, it's not that I didn't understand it, it's just the rate at which I was absorbing the information was much slower than things that came before it. It was quite a lot at once. And to be honest, I've never actually used this again. And if I was going to do input-output stuff with files, it's very easy to pick up now with my understanding of software, but and ChatGPT can help you out a little bit if you need it. But this is something that meh, give or take. Read it, understand it perhaps, but anyway, that's just my opinion. Advanced Ruby, yeah, this is really handy to know pattern matching in later versions of Ruby, how to use blocks, and then building your own custom enumerables. This is a really good project. This will solidify your understanding of Ruby enumerables and just the Ruby language itself, building that with the yields and blocks, etc. That's a great project. Okay, so you can see a bit of computer science. This is where things start to get DSA, data structures, algorithms, more into what you might study in university or in an advanced computer science curriculum somewhere, like here. And I did most of these. I wanted to understand things. Okay, so recursion, looking at time and space complexity, that's very handy to understand because you may get asked about these things when you are writing software. You need to know how long things are going to take and the differences in time complexity based on your approach, and space complexity too when it comes to memory. And then common DSAs, yeah, that's good. I mean, especially if you're looking at interviews soon, you might want to get more practice on this. Though companies I interview at generally are more take-home projects of building something practical than DSAs. But if you are looking at certain companies that use DSAs, then this is great. Linked lists, that was fun. I enjoyed the linked list project. Binary search trees, okay, I read about them. Did the project. It was tough. Like I said, I was in a rush. So I wasn't giving myself the time or the patience to absorb this information. I wanted to get through this as quick as possible. And the Knights Travails project for me, I was just like, this is going to take me, what, a week? Maybe 2 weeks or something to figure out? I had no idea. And I was just like, I'm willing to take a bet that I can skip this project and be okay. I think as long as I understand what recursion is and what binary trees are, how to traverse them, at least in a conceptual manner, then I know enough that if I come across the need to have to implement it, at least I know what it is, and then at that time I was putting the burden on myself at that time basically to figure it out. If you have the time and the patience and the drive and desire, then definitely do this project. I think you learn a lot by doing this. Though when it comes to core web development, I'm not sure that it's really that practical or necessary, but it is very practical for understanding computer science, I think. Okay, Git. Yes, this was a new lesson afterwards, working with remotes. But definitely Git is a very practical thing to understand. You cannot go wrong with learning and understanding Git. Testing Ruby with RSpec. Again, I looked at the content for test-driven development, an introduction for RSpec, and I did all the exercises for this so that I understood how to use RSpec and basically what is testing, why do we do it, how do we set things up. So I looked at the lessons, I did those exercises and they were great, but I didn't do the project. I didn't do Connect 4 again because it was a lot like building Tic-Tac-Toe or the prior projects, but this time with test-driven development. this is practical, I think. There are big proponents of test-driven development out there. Depending on where the company you are interviewing with or get employed at, they may employ this as a practice. So something that is definitely useful to understand and have some experience with. Okay, and then the final Ruby project. Well, that was chess. That's a big project, and I think it would be reasonable to say that it could take up to 3-4 weeks to finish that project or more, depending on how much time you're putting into it. And I just didn't have that time, and I didn't have the patience to really spend that much time building a chess game. So I don't like chess, I don't play it, I don't really care about the game. I care about building stuff that employers want to see. And maybe a chess game has helped people in the interviews in the past because it is a pretty impressive project, but it's nowhere near as impressive as building an actual web app, in my opinion. Okay, so let's look at the next one, intermediate HTML, CSS. Did all of this. I think there is no replacement for understanding HTML and CSS. Every single web app is going to use these I won't call them languages, but markup and CSS. Databases. Again, I think this is very practical knowledge to have, understanding what databases are, how they work, and then understanding SQL. That is one of those things that I think if you ask a lot of web developers, software engineers, what's the one language that everybody should know? It would be SQL, right? How to get data, basically structure queries, so the database will return what you need it to. And this SQL Zoo or SQL Zoo is a great project for solidifying that. So definitely recommend doing that. Okay. Then we got to Ruby on Rails, and for me this is where the rubber hit the road, because I really wanted to learn Ruby on Rails. My goal was to get a Ruby on Rails job. So again, a couple lessons were added after the fact. I would have done these otherwise. So introduction, Rails basics, understanding active record. If you're interested in Rails, do not skip any of this stuff. This is all very important information. You will not retain everything. And chances are that some of the stuff you learn here will not even be used where you end up getting a job, because they'll be using an older version of Rails, possibly. So, this is more the latest versions of Rails, or later versions of Rails. This is more relevant too. Forms and authentication. So if there's one thing in web development, forms and authentication are two foundations of web development. Definitely study that and learn that stuff. Advanced forms and active record. So for those who don't know, active record is a library that allows you to query the database that the Ruby on Rails application connects to in a very sort of friendly manner. It does a lot of the heavy lifting for you. Okay, APIs. I learned most about APIs on the job, but I think it's good to understand what an API is and what it isn't, and understand some of the best practices around building and consuming APIs. And don't have to go crazy. I think this information here is enough, and there is a little project for helping you understand that. Rails sprinkles. I just basically sort of sprinkled my way through that. I didn't spend a ton of time on that stuff. And then mailers and advanced topics. Yeah, I think it's good to understand what mailers are and how they work. It's pretty basic stuff. And this WebSockets and Action Cable lesson, to be honest, is kind of redundant now that Hotwire is in place and you have turbo streams rather. I would kind of take or leave that one. And then the Rails final project. This is a really important one because you're putting it all together and you build a pretty cool little app here. And for me, this was where I really wanted to show what I could do. So instead of building the social media app that this project asked you to, or this lesson asked you to do. I built a dog adoption application that was a real live production application with real users, and that's still functioning today. And I think we've got like 60 something adoptions processed through it now. So I wanted to build something real. It put a lot more burden on me, or responsibility on me, to make something that actually worked all the way through and had no rough edges. And I think that does go a long way when you're trying to impress an interviewer. So yeah, there is no replacement for building a real production app with real users if you're trying to impress somebody. That's for sure. Okay, what's next? As you can see, that's about it. That's all I did. I didn't do anything else. Did a couple lessons in getting hired. I have learned a little bit about React by myself and through jobs. Same with JavaScript. Because I understood or understand Ruby, have more comfort in Ruby, picking up more advanced concepts in JavaScript is very straightforward, because a lot of these concepts do apply from one language to another. So that's as far as I got. And I'm, consider myself an alumni of the Odin Project, but at the same time, I didn't do everything. I skipped a few things, and I still managed to go out and get work. The kicker here, though, is that I built a production application. I worked my ass off and made sure that what I built was impressive, and that's what got me my first internship. And then from there, I got my next job because I had some social proof, the fact that I did an internship and had good references and good resources. So there you have it. Enjoy the Odin Project, like, subscribe. I'm going to chill by my fire here for a little bit. Have a good night.